All right, we'll give it just a second there to catch up, and then I think we're good to go. Let me make sure here. We're just watching. There we go. All right, we're live.
Hey,
Hey, hello everybody, and welcome to another interview with the artist. And today we are sitting down with somebody I have been very excited to talk to, and I'm super happy to have on the show. Mr. Erik Swinson, P3 Grandmaster, recent winner of Best in Show at the Nova Open Capital Palette, and an all-around awesome dude. How you doing, buddy?
good man. How are you?
I am fantastic. I couldn't be better. Erik is an amazing painter, as you're going to see from some of his pieces we look at later. We got to hang out a lot more. I think this is the first year you and I really got to hang out at Nova, which was great. It was
Yeah, last year was the first year I'd been to Nova. I didn't know a whole lot of the people, so didn't get chatting up with everyone. But yeah, I mean, met last year, and this year we got a good chance to hang out. So
absolutely. Oh yes, and as someone has already said in the comments, and epic beard owner. You do
oh
have quite an illustrious and impressive beard. It is true. Absolutely. All right. So we're going to talk about all sorts of stuff today. What Erik's journey has been as a painter. We're going to look at some of his awesome work. Um, for those of you who know who watched the show on Wednesday, I am still on the mend, so I'm getting better on medicine, but I may still cough occasionally or blow my nose. So I will mute myself. Don't worry. But if you see me suddenly turn away from there, or it's because I don't want to cough in your ears. But anyway, Erik, you survived. You got back from Nova. No sickness. You weren't laid up. Good for you. You have a strong
yeah,
immune system.
yeah, man. I almost didn't survive the drive back, but it wasn't too bad. The 95, no matter what, around Washington D.C.
Yeah.
is always nightmare traffic.
Which is insane because you left. You left not about the same time I did. So that was like what 8 p.m. on a Sunday. You
Yep,
would think, right?
yep.
Like, yeah,
Sat in dead stop traffic for almost 2 hours.
that is it's insane. DC traffic is pretty much the worst, and that's why like when I go to Novum, I was like, "What time are you going to be there?" And I'm like, "Well, look, right now the map says 2 o'clock, but it could be any time between 2 and 5. Like given DC traffic, you never know.
Yeah.
So I'll call you when I get there. Yeah. All right. So let's get right into it, man. You're obviously an extremely talented artist, but where did you start? What got you into painting? Where did the journey begin?
Oh man. So I guess I drew a lot from a young age. I was always the kid just scribbling on everything. Um, Went through like a art program offered in Virginia through school. You would like go to separate art school in the like daytime. So you'd spend like half your time at that, half your time at normal school.
Whoa, hold on. This exists? That sounds
Yeah.
amazing. How come
Yeah.
this wasn't a program available to me? I am jealous. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was like 3 days a week or something. You'd leave early and go over to a separate school to go just do art. So that was pretty fun. Then I got into painting scale models. Like I was big into painting Gundam models.
Okay.
So I did that for a while. It's probably throughout my teens into my, early 20s. And then a buddy of mine was like, hey, like the total like dealer he was. He was like, you like painting models, right? And I'm like, I do like painting models. And he's like, there's this game that you can paint the models and then play with them. So I ended up getting into 40K.
Nice. So did he open a trench coat and have like a dreadnought and a few space marines inside?
Yeah,
Like you can get
yeah.
these first couple, I'll just give them to you. You got to buy the
Oh,
rest.
so there's a thing in with Gundam models where garage kits are real popular. So they'll make conversion kits for these models where you can put like additional armor plates or whatever on them.
Right.
So he immediately starts me off by being like, "Yeah, these Space Marines are cool, right?" And I'm like, "Yeah, they're pretty cool." He's like, "Check out these Forge World ones."
Wow, he got you right into the hard stuff right away.
Yeah, so I ended up picking up a bunch of the old Death Guard Forge World Plague Marines and went from there.
Nice. All right, so you're in there, you're playing some 40K. You're painting up. You're already in the deep end of the pool because you're ordering the expensive replacement kits from Forge World. Right on.
Yep.
So where do we go from there? Did you play 40K for a while and get real competitive? Like, were you just painting to paint still at that point, or were you still trying to do like a high quality? Where were you at in that sort of
Um,
progression?
I, I wouldn't say I was like super high quality. I mean, I was painting pretty good. I would win like the best army or whatever at a local, tournament or something, but I wasn't painting for display yet. Um, yeah, I played that for a while. I won some tournaments. I got pretty into the game. Then I eventually, what was it, sixth edition when they introduced flyers? I got kind of out of it. A lot of the game store, our local game store players started dropping it. They just weren't happy with the rule set,
Okay.
and everybody switched over to War Machine. So I played that for a while, and then started painting more. I noticed, people started to say like, yeah, quality's improving, and then finally I was going to go to Lock and Load in Seattle, which is like their version of Privateer Press's version of Games Day.
Right. They're
Uh,
they're they're big once a year, like really, really ultra paint competition.
yeah, it's theirs, and I decided to paint a model for their painting competition. It was the my first like true competition, outside of just best paid an army or whatever.
Sure. So you
Uh,
you just decided to take one model?
yeah, I entered one model.
Wow. Okay, so you're Eastern Coast with me. So
Hmm.
you go all the way to Seattle and you're like, this is it. This is my one. I
Yeah,
respect. Okay. All right.
yeah. I entered one model. I ended up getting a gold my first time entering, and ended up getting basically runner up for best in show.
Wow. Okay. So, yeah, so let's talk. I want to dig into that real quick cuz first of all, that's amazing. I mean, like obviously that's amazing. I think you probably know that's amazing. But like at that point, so this is like the transition into this is probably a couple years after the transition from six, right? When you had gotten over there, I assume.
Yeah, it was. This was 2016 at this point, so this is what 3 years ago.
3 years ago. Okay. So had you been like engaging with other people's content? You know what I mean? Like had you been like watching tutorials on YouTube? Had you really buckled down and said, I want to become a better painter in some dedicated way through the tools that are out there? Or had you just like, kept working diligently and tried to improve yourself? Like what got you to that point?
I think it was a bit more the latter. I mean, I never really watched like tutorials or anything. I mostly just would go on like Cool Mini or Not, and I'd see stuff from like amazing artists and be like, how the heck are they doing this? Or I'd look at, Golden Demons and all these other ones and be like, these models are insane, and just try and emulate what they were doing and get my stuff to be better.
Nice. All right. So did you find yourself like reverse engineering techniques a lot, like where you look at somebody's cool miniature and you think, okay, how did they achieve that? And you try to like unpack it and do your own version of it, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I would say that was mostly it. I will mention I definitely found Roman's blog, the Massive Voodoo blog. That was a big help for thing because the painting side of I already understood, right? Like color theory, things like light and shadow, things like that. I had a grasp on.
Sure.
It was the more hobby focused stuff where it was like basing and all these materials that I wasn't familiar with. Those
The
were
the infusion of the craft projects
yeah.
into miniature painting, right? It's so funny because you're absolutely right. Like half of miniature painting for competition ends up being like, yeah, exactly this art, the study of light and color and understanding all these things. And then the other half ends up being like, or maybe some percentage, not half, but ends up being like knowing how to do fun craft projects with stuff laying around your house. Yeah, and like it's just like you don't necessarily expect you suddenly needed to know how to kit bash the slice out of the side of an old broken down gas station in the middle of the desert when you set about to painting figures. You weren't expecting that was going to be part of your repertoire, right? Yeah.
No, yeah, no, and it is definitely something I'm still working on.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. And I agree with you on Massive Voodoo. Like Roman's blog, for those, and this has been mentioned on this show before, but it's absolutely worth a shout out. I mean, just the list of techniques and stuff and creativity, right? That,
Yeah,
that they have there for achieving that. And Roman really has a love for like capturing nature out there in those projects, like in broken down and organic things and stuff like that. He's got a great eye for that. So, yeah. All right. So is 2016, so like let's say that lock and load, is that your first actual competition? Like
That is,
other than some local thing?
yeah, that's my first ever like national competition, right?
Right, sure. Yeah, yeah. Wow. Okay. So you get the gold, you get basically runner up. Does that like spark it in the blood or what happens there?
Yeah, that definitely. I'm glad I didn't win Best in Show my first time
Sure.
because I feel like if I did, I would have been just like, I'm the best, like enter
Right.
my first show, take it. Yeah, no, it definitely like sparked a fire like after that, where it was like, okay, I was getting second was the best thing that could happen because now next year I want to take first.
Right. Right. You got that hunger. Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, I get that. All right. So then what happens over the next year? What do you do on that road
Uh,
to trying to get there?
yeah, I start painting. I just start painting display models more. I start like painting stuff that's not part of my army, like just cool models for fun. Um, and then just painting a ton more. And then they ended up coming out with. I'd had a model planned for the next lock and load. I can't even remember what it is now, but they ended up coming out that year in 2017 with the Nemo bust
Oh yeah, sure.
Adepticon. Like
Yep.
they had announced that they were going to do busts, and I was like, I wanted to try one, and it's a subject matter I like for the faction I play. I'm gonna paint this bust. This is my entry. So I ended up painting the Nemo bust. The first, this might make some people angry, but this was the first bust I ever painted, and took it to the show, and ended up. That's the year I won P3 Grandmaster.
Nice. Nice. Well, and I think by that point it's interesting too. So when you approach doing a bust for the first time, did you already have a concept in your mind of like the fact that busts require so much more detail? You know, I always say like the key to bust is more. You paint them
Yeah.
as much as you think you should, then you do twice as much, right? Or something like that is my general statement, right? Because they need more life, more environment, more texture, more light, more everything, right? Because you're so zoomed in on something.
Mhm. Absolutely. Like, and I was familiar with some portrait work, so I understand. It's definitely was in my wheelhouse. I just had never tried before on something so small.
Right.
So painting it was like kind of second nature. It's just a bigger version of a miniature, and yeah, he's got more detail and a little more life into the skin. You got to paint more details. I definitely used a lot of reference. This is something that I try and impress on people a lot is to use reference photos. I had a picture of what is his name, Sam. Um, he was in Tombstone.
Oh, Sam Elliott.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a picture of Sam Elliott just like sitting on my desk as
Nice.
a reference photo for that paint job.
That's a really good idea. I will tell you right now. I'm a big fan of like research and reference photos. I never thought about just using like, and I assume you had just like a close up shot of him from Tombstone or something like that. So you got the same kind of angle or zoom in effectively of the bust,
Yeah,
right?
and well, I mean, they have similar facial features.
Yep.
The mustache is very the same. It was just some picture of Sam Elliott that had a lighting angle that I liked, and I could see how the folds and skin and everything worked. So that's the how I ended up painting that bust.
Nice. That's awesome. Sorry, I had a little cough break there.
All right.
Anyway, so that's fantastic. So there you take the Grandmaster. And then I remember 2018, when the first time you came to Nova, um, you uh, you and I both got gold, but you got the first place in busts because you had that really awesome. It was I don't know her name, but she's the one with like the she looks kind of Russianish. It's Russian
Yeah, it's
in my mind.
Sporsha. She's a
There you go.
Kador character.
I don't know P3 stuff well enough, but that was a beautiful, beautiful job you did on that bust as well. It was fantastic.
Oh, thanks, man.
So, Would you say now that you've kind of come into it that like you've really found you like painting busts? Is that like because it's something you're obviously very good at. Has it just become part of it that you've come to really enjoy?
Yeah, I think it's definitely my favorite of the like mediums, of
Right.
the categories. I like painting the faces, so the face is where the most character is, so I enjoy that. It also, I get to joke that it's because I suck at making bases and I don't have to do it for busts. So
Right. Yep, absolutely. There you go. Just like good angle on a nice plinth and you're ready to rock. There you go. Yep. Awesome. So what is your process right now? So when you're sitting down, that more or less brings it up to the current day. You're still competing a lot. Obviously you're still doing well. So like what's your current process? Like what do you do? You want to paint a competition piece. Walk us through your sort of process for that. How do you select the thing, figure out your references? Like what are the steps you take?
um, you know, for selecting a model, it's not super planned. I definitely don't plan out my entries like way in advance or anything. They're
Mhm.
normally maybe a few months out, from whatever show I'm going to. And it's just whatever model I see that I'm like, that's the one. I'm just gonna paint that. I love this model. Puts a story or a picture in my mind of what I expect the paint to look like, and I just go with it.
I'm a big believer that like if you want to do a high-end paint job on something, it has to be a piece you really love and you're passionate about because there's going to be some point in the painting of that thing where you get frustrated, right? Where it's like cuz you got to
Yeah,
see you're going to be with that thing for a long time, many dozens and dozens and dozens of hours, right? And if it's not a thing you really love, it's going to be very hard to get over that hump and to instead just like not do your best work or set it to the side or never finish it. It sounds like you're in the same vein there. You try to find something you really like, you really love that clicks with you in some way.
yeah, it's absolutely. I mean, I would say that I see a model and I just go, yeah, that's the one. I'm just gonna paint that.
Right on. So then like you want to do it. Do you find that often the image for what the final thing is it in your head from the beginning? I'm always fascinated by this when talking to artists and their process. Like how close to done is it in your head when you start versus how much are you finding while you're painting? You know what I mean?
I would say I definitely have a picture in my head of what I want the model to look like, but it's not perfect, right? So I might start and then I work on something and maybe the picture in my head is wrong and you have to be willing to make the change, if something's not working. So just paint over it or change the base or
Or
whatnot.
whatever. Right. How much do you find yourself like how much do you find yourself pre-planning anything? Like do you do color palette swatches or anything like that? Do you lay down, like I think of, Marika Reimer who was always famous for like she would sort of get a printout picture in like black and white of what she was going to
Mhm.
paint and then she would just quickly slap down the colors kind of roughly in the areas where she was going to paint it, right? Or you've got the extreme of that where you got like Ben Cantor, who we had on the show, who like basically does the whole model in Photoshop or Illustrator or whatever, and then just replicates what he's already done digitally, right? It's insane. He
Yeah.
does hundreds of hours of pre work or whatever.
Most of the time, specifically for the paint, I don't do a lot of like digital work beforehand. I will sketch bases, on my tablet or something. So I'll
Sure.
take a picture of the model, pull it in, and then sketch out different compositions for the base because it's just something it doesn't come naturally to me like paint and color do. So I have to sketch that out a lot more to find something that I like.
Oh, that's a cool idea. So basically, you take a photo of like the mini as it is,
Hmm.
right? And then you just cut it out, drop it into your tablet, and then just kind of like start sketching ideas around it of
Yeah.
potential ways to have bases and compositional elements. That's a really cool idea. I'd never thought about that. That's a really great idea.
Yeah, I normally just take a picture of what I think is the primary view of the model and draw around that.
Nice.
It doesn't have to be, super realized or anything because I'm never gonna end up sculpting it the same exact way that I drew it. But,
Right.
just a rough idea.
No,
Uh,
that's awesome.
yeah, and then occasionally, like if I'm painting something and I get a color that's doesn't look right to me, I'll drop it into Photoshop or whatnot and mess with the colors a little bit and see if like, oh, I can't quite figure out what this element should look like. And
Right.
instead of repainting it 7 times, I'll just go in and mess with the colors in there.
So, how often do you do you ever find yourself at a place where this piece was you had originally intended to do this for competition? You get pretty deep into it, and then you just decide, you know what? No. Like, do you ever put them aside? Have you ever just said, "Nah, this didn't turn out how I wanted"?
Yeah, there's definitely models that are, I've got models on my desk surrounding me right now. I got this guy right here. I've got the Elder Scissor Knight
Oh yeah, sure.
from Kingdom Death. I had originally intended on painting for Crystal Brush, and I got about 20% of the way through it and was like, it's not working for me. I'm changing gears and just switch to something else because
Right.
I don't want to force myself to paint something that I'm getting frustrated with or I'm not enjoying. I'll come back to him later, I'm sure, and paint him just for fun. But it's you got to love what you're painting.
Yeah. I think that's an important thing, like because if you're gonna in painting for competition, it's one of the things or display or showcase or whatever you want to call it, right? People have different terms. One of the things I've noticed is that like I'll often start out with the best intentions with a piece. I'll think this is going to be a great one, right? And I have this idea in my head. And then I start actually painting and I'm like, "Oh, no. No, this didn't work out how I thought it was
Yeah,
going to." you know, and like you just put it to the side and you're like, "You know what? This will just be a funsy piece later. This isn't going to be what I thought it was." Like oftentimes that'll come up with details that I really wasn't thinking. In your head, the model's often like the major components, and then when you get into it, it'll have like some details and there'll be little elements. And I'm like, oh, what is this little detail doing here or this thing? Like this is why did the sculptor do this to me? This just isn't working or something.
yeah.
Or the pose or whatever it happens to be. Yeah, right on. It sounds like I think one of the advantages you have it's really interesting because in talking to the people I've talked to, there's like some people who have an art background and some people who have like the Warhammer background and some people who have the P3 background and you somehow have magically combined all three. Like you have all the backgrounds at once. You even did scale models in Gundam, which is like I suppose the fourth row did. Like
Yeah.
you've covered all the bases.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think that's maybe why anytime somebody tells me the way they got into it, I'm like, yeah, man, that sounds really familiar.
right, because you did all the inroads. Yeah, you just took all the roads at once. Absolutely. All right, very nice. That's awesome stuff, man. Okay. So what's the next thing you're painting for right now? What's on your what's in your sights?
I'd really like to attend Monte San Savino in Italy in November.
Yeah,
I'm
man.
still working on the logistics of going, but I want to. I'd like to enter a European competition and see the level that it's at over there and compare, to what we're doing.
Monty sounds so awesome. If you end up going over, man, I want the full report. I really do because I think it would just be amazing to walk. They have so many amazing pieces there, right? From everything I've ever seen of the show, it's just
Yeah,
incredible. And I like if I went, I would go with the opposite of expectations personally. I would go just like excited to meet everybody and see everything. I just think it's such a good try. It's such a cool venue and experience. So yeah, man, I want to see you go over there.
yeah. I mean, I'm expecting to get crushed, but but I'd like to see where not just I'm at, but where the American painting community is at, sort of as a whole. Because I definitely feel like we get looked down on a little bit. So
I think that happens a little bit. Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. We're doing okay over here in the States, but I get it. It's at the same time, and I think that you and I kind of talked about this a little. I'm jealous of like the Europeans' ability to kind of quickly and easily get around and have little workshops with each other. You know, you can just like
Yeah.
hop a train and go from, you can go from France over to Germany or, whatever, and hit up a workshop. You can make those kinds of travels pretty cheap and easy. And there's a lot of people there there's a lot of really good little communities in the different countries in Italy and Spain and Germany and the UK who are all doing really great work, and they have a good
Yeah.
community bond, with each other. We're so much more
Absolutely.
spread out here, right?
Yep.
It's rough. All right. Well, let's take a look at some of your work there, buddy. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
All right. So, boop boop doo. We're gonna start. This is gonna cover your face. So now people in the audience are just looking at your work. They can't see you anymore.
Oh,
But
good. I can start picking my nose.
yeah, exactly. All you want. Now's the time. You just start. Whatever you need to do. But we're gonna start with the anonymous bust. And I'll kind of cycle through the different photos. But this was, I believe, you did this for Banshee's anonymous bust contest, right? Where everybody was challenged to paint basically the same bust, and there was kind of
Yep.
yeah. So take us through it. What inspired this? Because this is an awesome piece with color.
So I had originally just painted it pretty normal, right? Like he had two categories to give some context to the contest. It was two categories. You had the painting competition, and then you had the conversion competition. Um, I knew I wasn't gonna do great in the conversion, so it's not normally my thing. So I did painting, and I originally had painted it pretty simple, I would say. I mean, it's still kind of simple, but it was pretty bog standard flesh tones and everything.
Gotcha.
And uh, I didn't like where it was at. I started looking at, pictures of, started going through some of the Fauvism painters, like inspired by Andre Derain and Henry Matisse,
Yep.
and just their use of color and like freedom of brushstrokes and everything, and just repainted the mod, like just painted right on top of it. Essentially using my original paint job as like a value sketch,
Right.
and just painted color directly on top of it.
It's such an awesome use of color. Like I love how you took to me what it feels like, and I don't know, you can tell me if I'm crazy or not. But to me what it feels like is you took the sort of true color of all these elements that normally compose our paints, right? So like the hair and the beard, we always talk about the lower third of the face being blue or shadows having blues in them or purples in them, right? Reflected light in the shadow being warm and red. The skin tone, especially on the forehead, being yellow and the light being yellow. And it feels like you took those concepts and you just said, okay, well, instead of playing with the desaturated tones we normally play with when we're doing this, I'm going to just use the true colors and really experiment and make something super vibrant with everything's kind of true color.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate. Like if you look at some of those old Favas and painters, they just use straight pure color pigment. So that's well, my idea was is fine. I mean, it's a little bit of the Simpsons thing, right? Where it's like the pure yellow skin because that's the color we associate
Right.
closest with skin tone. Um, so yeah, it was just slap some pure color on there and just have fun.
Absolutely. Yeah, this came out absolutely awesome. I loved this one. This was one of the absolute standouts for me because I was watching this contest enthusiastically. It was great to see everybody um it was great to see everybody like it's such an interesting challenge, right? Because everybody had to paint the same bust, right? It was everybody was dealing with the same canvas effectively, right?
Mhm.
And so it was just so fascinating to see all the artists' interpretations of it. So I thought this was a really good one.
Yeah, there was gorgeous models in there. I mean, Ben Cantor's was really great. Trying to think of all the other ones, but there was definitely some really fantastic work in that whole contest, and the conversions were particularly interesting to see all the different takes on that model.
It was amazing what people turned this very simple thing into, right? Like, yeah, it's worth a check out. I believe all the models are still available on Banshee's site, so you can still go back and see all of the like finalists and whatever. So it's worth I'll throw that link down in the description so people can see it. All right, awesome. So next up we have Logan. Oh, Logan. This is a great thing. I think I saw this at Crystal Brush for the first time. Yeah, so this is another awesome bust from you. You want to walk us through this one?
Yeah, that was I saw that bust from so Hera Models makes that bust. It's part of their academic line. I knew I wanted to do a bust for Crystal Brush, but I hadn't decided what. And I saw Mark Mosklin's post his picture of that
Yep.
like a couple months beforehand, and was just like, yeah, I need to paint that thing. Um, it's not super crazy of a bust because it's really just skin, like it's just skin and hair.
Right.
Um, but he's got such an interesting facial expression, and I love the character of Logan or Wolverine. So I wanted to play with that a little bit. So I tried to imagine like why does he have that expression on his face, and I ended up I pulled there's an old comic book cover, and I wish I could remember the name of the artist right now, where he's got those like glowing bullet holes in him.
Yeah.
Uh, and I just took a like a Dremel bit, one of those like the round balled end ones,
Mm-hmm.
and just started drilling holes in them. I imagine the story of that bust is like somebody thought it was a good idea to shoot Wolverine, and
Right.
he's giving them the side eye, like with the raised eyebrow, like, did you really think that would work against me?
Right. It's so he looks. It's such a perfect match to the expression, and you've really like refined it and captured it well with the paint. Because he just looks like somewhere between mildly annoyed and bemused. Right.
Yeah,
Like yeah, yeah. It's great. So I really think this is absolutely fantastic. So you based it on the comic cover, and there's one thing I want to draw everybody's attention. Oops, sorry, jumped off of Logan. There we go. One thing I want to draw everybody's attention to. Can we talk about the hair a little
sure,
bit on him, but not
absolutely.
specifically the hair on his head, like his chin and chest.
Yeah.
All right.
Uh, yeah, what you can't see in those photos, because I don't hit the Crystal Brush. That's the photos from
Yeah.
Crystal Brush, and they
Right.
didn't take a picture of his back, but he also has a bunch of nasty back hair too.
Oh, sure. He's a very hairy fellow,
Yeah,
Logan. Yes, absolutely.
which was some unusual Google image searching.
So, and all of that you laid on there. None of that's on the mini,
Yeah,
right?
that's all free-handed on. Yeah,
Exactly. You captured his like the texture of it so well. And the one of the details that I really want to draw everybody's attention to with it is how you like varied the length of the stubble and the sort of hairs across him. Like the chin stubble is very distinct from his chest hair, right? Even though they're both somewhat composed of like it's still his hair, right? And the way you varied the intensity and the sort of thickness of the hair around like his uh Adam's apple, I guess, or whatever, where the kind of under chin hair comes together along his pectoral muscles. And then most importantly, this detail I really really love. This is what caught me initially that I loved the most about this bust. The slight like pink texture you gave around each bullet hole where like the hair got melted by the bullet impact, right, or whatever.
yeah, it's supposed to look like it's singed off.
Yeah, exactly. Like such a great little detail because you can see how like it would have been easy to just do the bullet holes and still have the hair running all the way up against it, but you didn't do that. You had the like impact around the bullet also mapped, and I loved that. It's such a small capture, but it's really really nice.
Yeah, and I'd like to touch on a thing for a second
Sure.
where um, for each one of the things I consider when doing competition pieces is I always like to try and push myself on every piece. And every piece, I try and find something that I think I need to work on.
Yep.
And I try and do a model that, or I try and incorporate some like deliberate practice on that thing on that model. So for Wolverine, it was freehand and skin. And
Right.
then some of the other ones we'll look at later will be like I wanted to focus on non-metallic metal or whatever.
Right. Yeah, no, and I mean, you've done such a great job of capturing like the color temperature change in the shadows of his skin, the sort of blue. Again, just talking about like the sort of standard tones across the face, like the light catch around the center of his forehead and in the sort of rim of his hair looks really is just so greatly captured and so warm, and then goes down into like the cool blue light down here in his stubble and under his chin there. And we've talked a lot. I've talked a lot about deliberate practice. I think that's absolutely right. Right, every piece you have to challenge yourself in some way, where you're focusing on one specific thing. Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. All right. Anything else you want to mention about our boy Logan here?
Uh, yeah, not really. I mean, I tried to goof around with a little bit of cast shadows. I think you can kind of see it in
Yeah.
some of the shots where it's like the cast shadows. That's another thing I'm playing with now recently is trying to do more of that. But sort
Yeah.
of goof around with that a little.
Yeah. You can see it like if in the straight on shot, you can see so the audience notices here. I'll really point it out. You can see over here on the left side of his, I guess his right, but audience left. You can see how the shadow has a little bit of like a ridginess to it that's mimicking the his like I don't know what do you call them, lamb chops or whatever, right? His
Yeah,
chops
his
above.
chops.
Yes, his the signature Logan chops. Absolutely. I always wondered where he hid those in the mask because when he wears that full face mask, those would be so uncomfortable, squished in there. But I don't know. It's comics. All right. So next up, we've got Rocket Girl. You want to talk about Rocket Girl?
Yeah, that was so this was a really fun one because we a bunch of the guys from uh that go to Lock and Load. We had all joked last year that we were going to troll Dallas a little bit, who no longer works for Privateer Press, but we were going to troll him a little bit by all entering the same model.
Yeah.
So there was about 15, 16 of all Rocket Girls painted for the competition.
Nice.
But we decided to do there's Adam from Broken Egg Games. He makes a lot of like tokens and gaming
Yep.
accessories. He had contacted us at Adepticon because he had heard we were doing it, and we decided to donate all of them for a charity raffle for his cousin committed suicide after coming back from Afghanistan, and they have a PTSD charity in his name.
Nice.
So we've donated all of them, and they're going to raffle them off. And I think they're going to raffle them off this week or next week. So make sure I'll post some
Yeah, please hit
links
me
for
with a
that.
link for that. Absolutely. Yes, I'll absolutely put that in the description. That sounds fantastic. 100%.
Yeah. So, but the actual piece itself was I wanted to try doing a backdrop. So I'd never painted one on a miniature before. That was my first one. Um, so I wanted to just play with the colors of the backdrop, introduce some of that skylight reflecting off of her on the backside of her, painting freehand clouds and just having fun with that one.
Yeah, it's great. Lots of nice colors captured in the clouds that are really that are also really interesting extrapolations of the colors we see on her, right? So the two pieces speak to each other really well, like the background and her don't feel separate. They feel absolutely harmonious because like you have the little bits of red tone and stuff worked into the clouds that we see on her and like her bracer and on her saddle or whatever it is on the rocket. So that's nice. And then obviously you got the blue of the sky reflected down in like the sky earth non-metallic metal, as well as like the slight blue tinge to her, the black leather boots and stuff she's wearing, right? So they feel very, very in sync with each other.
Yeah, I was definitely going for that kind of 1960s like pinup look with the super shiny chrome rocket and just playing around with that.
It's definitely that. Like I think you captured Chrome here really, really nicely. Yeah, I think it came out well. Absolutely. Here we got a slightly different angle on her. There you go. Yeah, this is cool. I mean, I know I'm a big fan of backdrops. They're somewhat, I guess some people don't like them very much. I love them. I think they're a fun extra setting for the miniature. It's always tough because you're going to block off
Yeah,
vision to part of your miniature, you know?
I think
Uh,
they work great on certain miniatures, right?
yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
not every miniature looks good from the back.
Right. Right. I think especially when you want like a certain viewing angle or when like some particular scene
Hmm.
really works. Like uh you know, a good one is like Sam did that dwarf piece, The Lost in the Necropolis for
Yeah,
well, this kind of thing where she's in the sky. It adds so much more to the reflections, to the scene of what she's doing. Like I imagine this piece without the backdrop and it's so much less interesting to me. And I don't mean that in any negative way on the painting. I just mean like you made her feel like she's really in the world, right? By having that backdrop. Like I think it's absolutely additive to the piece, not subtractive in any way. Right.
yeah. I definitely feel like it helped with that one.
Yeah.
Um, and a lot of you know, a lot of what we see, like miniature painters, what we see, we don't get to see a ton of these pieces in person. So most of the time we consume a lot of this stuff through social media or, websites like Cool Mini or Not, Putty and Paint.
Right.
And, we get to choose how people see these models. So what's the difference between me putting her on a blue background when taking the photo and putting her on a backdrop?
Right. Absolutely. Nope. It's a great point. 100%. All right. Next up, we have, oh, yes. Oh, this beautiful piece. So this is the Tengu. I think I'm mispronouncing that. Tenguko. Right?
Tengu, yeah, the Tenguko, I think is how that would be pronounced, but it's Tengu, yeah.
Yeah. So this was obviously your bust that I saw that like from this year at Nova. This was absolutely gorgeous. As I mentioned to you, um, as soon as this showed up in the case, I was like, "Oh man,
I'm sorry.
no, it's all right, buddy. I don't. I never mind when it's something that I know is so good, and this was so good. Like I was so excited about this piece. I love seeing awesome work like this. So this is great. So yeah, walk us through this thing because it's amazing, and there's so much I want to draw people's attention to, but I'll let you go first.
I mean, I was talking before about like just instantly falling in love with a model.
Mm-hmm.
I saw Robot Rocket miniatures and Aaron Ruiz sculpted that, and I saw them post up that for like the teaser image shots, and just immediately was like, I need to paint this thing. Like this is the model I'm painting for whenever it comes out, the next competition that thing's getting entered in. And I just immediately jumped on it. Like as soon as I got it in, the day I got it, I put it together and then immediately started painting on it. But yeah, I mean, color wise, he's. I wanted to use a lot of reds. I
Mm-hmm.
don't normally paint with a ton of reds, but the mythological creature, the Tengu, it's this Japanese demon. They're normally depicted with red faces, and so I wanted to kind of get that cyberpunk feel that he has,
Right.
while also sticking true to the kind of mythological creature and playing with like the bust has like this nice like cybernetic half and then traditional Japanese uh like samurai or feudal era half.
Right.
Like it's almost split down the middle, or like a diagonal from his shoulder down to his waist, right?
Right.
So I was playing a bit with the color there, where the one side is all non-metallic metal, real shiny, and the other side is like more natural materials, and using the color of the two to kind of mix them together.
Yeah. 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 This is an absolutely this is such a stunner, and I want to draw people's attention to several things because when you look at a piece like this is one of those things where you really want to look and just take in all the great small touches, and there's so much going on here that I want to draw the audience's attention to. So first off, let's jump over. I'm going to move to the angle where we can kind of see from the more human side of him, as it were.
Yeah.
Your touch of like bringing some of the veins out by making them this sort of bluish color, this sort of inhumanish color, right?
Mhm.
But that at also the same time is hiding a little more of the blue, which is quite dominant on the other side. here on this side, right? It's kind of bringing that tone over. I want everybody to really notice all the way that Erik played with reflected light here. Like it would have been easy to just make under his arm and under his pec and down here to just make these shadows. But it's not. This wonderful magenta push in that happens here on the wings. It's under his hair here. It's coming up under his arm, his pec. You can see it in the reflected light of the non-metallic gold down here at the bottom on the edges of his daisho. So just like the little touches like that of where everything is capturing this beautiful light that's reflecting back up from kind of off, off screen, as it were, right? Oops. Excuse me. And like the difference in the wings between how they look when you look straight on from the back and when we look from this side really solidifies how much more you're playing with reflected light and color there. It's just fantastic.
Well, thanks, man. Yeah, I really wanted to add that splash of color to give that like feeling of the cyberpunk city with the crazy neon lights and stuff. So I like to use that a lot. That bit of under light.
Right. It adds so much more interest, right? Because a flat shadow is just a flat shadow. It's not doing anything. It's not communicating anything, right? When you suddenly make that transition, it becomes so much more interesting. Yeah, oops. Okay. All right. Yeah, this guy is just fantastic, man. Just fantastic.
Thank you.
All right. So last up, we have the girl herself. So this is the Totem Huntress.
Yes.
This is what took best in show. So I'm starting here on the zoomed in image on her. Okay, so we can see all that stuff. So walk us through this piece and what excited you about this one and kind of the story of this one.
So that is a new 75 millimeter model from Privateer Press. They haven't done one of their busts in a while, but they started a new line of like this 75 millimeter, which I've been getting way more into. And so it's a scaled up version of a mini that currently exists. They've done some more detail work and made some small alterations, but that miniature is, I think, the best miniature that they've ever sculpted for the company.
Yep.
So immediately stood out to me as like a piece I had to do. I have the little one sitting around here somewhere, but so yeah, I wanted to really get that jungle atmosphere and push my basing work on a model. So I was definitely inspired by, bring up Roman again. Roman has a piece called Lord of the Jungle, where it's like Tarzan surround, like it's this huge piece. The thing's like 13 inches or something tall.
Right.
Well, huge for a miniature,
right.
But it's pretty large, and it's just, you can just feel like that jungle atmosphere. You can imagine the setting. So that's definitely something I was going for. And I was inspired by Predator, and mutual friend of ours, Chris Sir,
Yep.
has been pushing me and helping me on my basing. So he was a big help on this piece.
Nice. So walk us through how you made the base, because I think it looks great. And like there are little things I'll draw everybody's attention to, but what did you do to make this base?
So that base, I basically went to the pet store and bought a bunch of stuff. They sell this terrarium stuff called spiderwood.
Okay.
And it's like basically like these driftwood root clusters. And I took it, and I have a small wood workshop in my garage, and I just started chopping it up on the bandsaw and placing, finding where I think the model would look nice standing, trying to get that curve of the composition, and then just started placing smaller sticks around, kind of twisting vines. And then I used real roots that I just dug up out of the ground, just walking around the park.
Nice.
For the little thin vines, and then all the foliage is made from aquarium plants that they come in like huge packs, and I just clip them off their sprue individually, would drill a little hole and glue them on.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, it came out well, and there's little touches to this that I really like. So, and this is the kind of thing that I think it can be easy for people to miss in basing, but I think you captured so well here. So, you have the light hitting her very much in a shaft where this part of the tree that she's on is quite well lit, whereas, some of this under area is more in this sort of deep green shadow, right? And so you very much cast her as the sort of central point that we're drawing our attention to. And not only do you do that through, the standard techniques on the figure of making her face the center of attention and she's sort of brighter than the rest of the work, but then in addition, the background keeps pushing us toward it as well, right? As our eyes move from that dark to light. And then you've got these red flowers here that create a nice little vertical line up to her and draw your attention to like the reds, which people see. I'm going to go to the zoom in shot. People can see the little reds you've reflected in places like in her face and in her skin, right? That makes her feel a little more alive, quote unquote. And then even down to the point of the very subtle reflections on like the tip of her spear, where the tip of her spear is near one of these pink purple plants, and you've captured just a little bit of that reflected light in there. Just little touches like that absolutely make this just pop to me. It's fantastic.
Thanks for noticing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I imagined her as like standing up really high in the trees, and there was like a break in the canopy of the jungle, and just like a shaft of light coming down, illuminating her.
Yeah, and that's absolutely what it looks like there. It really sells. The other thing I want to draw the audience's attention to is stuff like where even details that it would not that people probably might not always notice have really interesting sort of texture and quality to them. So like obviously stuff like her skin, you did the sort of alien spots or the demon spots, whatever you want to call them, right? And those look really nice. Like that's great, creates a nice movement, breaks up all that negative space that would just be her kind of flat skin, right?
Yeah.
But then also stuff like your extra texture in the wood here, on the leather. You look at like the scuffing and marks you did on the underside of her, like the leather backing of her like tabard. Just every place where we can have a little bit of visual interest was added. And I do love the contrast you established where her legs are kind of into the green reflection of nature around her. Like that's the light that's cast here, but her face and her upper body has the red warm reflection of like a living thing in sunlight, right? So again, that's a nice contrast that sort of trips something inside us because of that red green, complementary color feeling there immediately happens.
Yeah, thank you.
So it's a great piece. It absolutely deserved its place. So super super well done. Uh, Anything else you want to say on her? We've got some questions from the audience about some of your pieces that I want to ask and kind of go
Yeah,
through.
I think the only other thing I'd say on her is it was fun hiding all the little critters on it.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoy that. It just gives it's like a little game of hide and seek that you get to, play with people who it's so easy, like especially at one of those competitions, right? For the judges or even just anybody walking by the case to just like look at your model at a glance and be like, "Oh, that's nice," and then just keep going.
Right.
So I like hiding some little stuff like that in my bigger pieces to just keep people's interest for a little bit longer.
Yeah, give them something to discover. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. Yep. All right. So some quick questions. Let's go back here. So we'll go back to the Logan bust quickly here. Um, the one of the audience members asked, with the chest hair, was it done using like stippling? What were you doing to create the chest hair on Logan?
It was a lot of tiny little lines, just a lot of tiny little line brushstrokes, and I was constantly trying to think about the direction that the hair grows
Right.
in. So it's not just like all one direction. Um, it follows like a specific pattern and contour. So I'm constantly doing brushstrokes in that direction.
Nice. And then on Rocket Girl, one of the questions that would ask was, what did you do to make the billowing smoke down at the bottom underneath her?
So the smoke, she comes with a base that's got a bit of smoke, but I had to extend it out, and it was just a bunch. So I took it, put it on the plinth, and then I built it out with like milliput, so 2-part epoxy putty,
Right.
and just sculpted lots of little balls. I just roll little balls, put them down, and then kind of blend them together to make them look like one big billowing cloud.
Nice. Awesome. All right. So now let's if the audience, if you've got any more questions, feel free to drop those over in the comments that are on the side of the screen. I'm going to minimize it. We're going back to you, Eric. So you got to stop. Got to stop. You got to put a shirt back on or whatever.
Oh no.
All right. So, okay. Uh, Such fantastic work, man. So let's start with a few questions, and then we've got at least one from the audience already, and we'll go from there. Um, all right. Question the first. Who is your favorite current miniature painter? Who isn't yourself?
Oh, there's so many, but I think currently Mark Moskvans is probably my favorite. That guy, every time he posts a new piece of work, I'm just continuously blown away by what he's doing. And it's easy to say someone like Creel's amazing or Land's amazing. I mean, I admire those guys, but I think Mark, as like a well-rounded painter,
Yeah.
is doing the most amazing work right now.
I think I really like Mark's work, and what always impresses me about him is that like he has such a nice subtle use of color in such an effective way, right? There's always like an emotion to the color and the way he uses it in his pieces that's so rich. And I think that's like it's something subtle that you can easily miss, right? But when you look and you keep looking, you're like, wow, he's really brought so much life and color into this thing.
Yeah, absolutely. He did a piece recently for Big Child's like new dwarf Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
Like this little dwarf slayer guy with with a big axe and has got this huge beard, and there's all these like beautiful warm reds like in the shadows, even like in his skin, carried throughout the model.
Yeah, exactly. No, great pick. Great pick. All right. What is your? You mentioned that you don't often use red. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
What's your? I get it. I have to. I sometimes I have to paint specific pieces to use like that bright red as well,
Yeah.
because it's just not a color I find myself using very often. So, but what is your favorite color to paint with?
Well, currently right now it's probably the red from Chimera.
Oh, okay.
After
Like their
painting,
true red.
yeah, it is so red. And it was a blast using it on that what's called. But if I had a go-to color that I tend to use on everything, probably like a deep sea blue or coal black or whatever,
Yeah, sure.
that deep turquoise color I tend to like using in shadows and things.
Nice. One of the questions from the audience: do you have any paint brand you prefer? Do you use a wide selection? You more of a one brand guy? Where are you at?
No, I am absolutely not a one brand guy.
Right
I
on.
can't stand paint is paint, right?
Right.
So use what works for you. If you like one particular paint, I use speaking of favorite paints, the black from Vallejo model color is my favorite black, and I've tried them all.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I don't have any brand loyalty towards paint. I tend to use a bit more scale color in the Chimera colors right now, but yeah, I'll use anything if it's good.
It's so true. And like what I've noticed is that, you know, within a particular brand, you will just find that like one color they made, one mix they made really sings, really works, is really nice, right? Has the right kind of tone. And then you'll be like, all right, well, that's the one I'm using from them or something like that. Then you'll go somewhere else. So
Yeah.
yeah, 100%. All right. Next question. Well, first of all, do you lick your brush? Are you a brush licker?
I do. I try. I'm trying to cut back.
We're all trying to stop. It's an addiction. We're all trying to quit.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so given that that's the case, what brand of paint taste or sorry, what paint, not just brand, what paint tastes the best?
I don't know which one tastes best, but I can definitely tell you which one tastes
All
worse.
right, I'm down with that.
I can tell you that what is the green shade, the green wash from GW.
Oh yes, like the Athonian one or whatever. These,
Yeah,
yeah,
that stuff is horrible.
it's absolutely true. I completely agree. I just yesterday was like I had used some of that and I licked my brush. I was like, oh God, that's right. It's so bad. Don't eat paint, kids. It's bad for you. Don't do it. This is us officially telling you, do not eat paint. It is very bad for you. All of this is meant as a joke. Okay, there we go. Uh, what do you think? Do you have a favorite type? And you can construe type however you like. Do you have a favorite type of minis to paint?
Um, yeah, I definitely tend to enjoy. Uh, I mean, I like bus, right?
Sure.
Yeah, so I would say I like bus, but I tend to like warriors, things like that, more than others.
Like then more than say like a wizard or something like that, or
Yeah,
somebody more of a figure that's got a little bit more aggression to it, right, or something
yeah.
like that.
Give me a knight or a barbarian over a wizard or something like that.
Gotcha. Right on. All right. Let's hit up some audience questions here. All right. So Mikey R says, "How do you tell the difference between the general funk we all hit halfway through a project and the feeling that a piece isn't really working?"
Uh, I mean, if you're yeah, so that happens, right? Everybody will definitely hit those points where they're feeling like it's just not coming together. I think that's one of those things that you just kind of have to push through, and just keep painting, or you can set it aside. I like to put I like to get in a like tabletop mini every once in a while
Right.
between doing a competition piece. So I'm happy to set a model down, analyze, pick it up later, paint a tabletop mini. Right now, I'm painting some Kingdom Death minis in between painting display pieces, and and pick it back up with fresh eyes and real analyze where I'm at and work from there.
Nice. And then, and I think that's a good point because then when you come back to it is when you can kind of really make that decision, right? When you come back to it, you can say like, okay, now with fresh eyes, am I going to take this all the way, or does this just become something that's just for fun, right?
Yeah.
And you've got distance now. No, that's great. Okay. Let's see. Laura Vari says, "What paints did you use to create the non-metallic metal gold effect on your hunter piece?"
Oh man, I'll try and remember. I'm really one of those guys that's against recipes.
Yeah, I know. Which we've talked about this before. I hate recipes too because I never end up using the same colors twice, right?
Yeah, I mean it's never recipes are good for doing armies where
Right.
you need to where every guy needs to match. But I probably reached for like Vallejo model color, English uniform, um, like ice yellow. I definitely used the pure yellow from Chimera. Uh, in the shadows, I probably used coal black in the dark reflections for the green.
Yep.
So
There you go. Yeah, that English uniform's a really popular component of a lot of a lot of non-metallic recipes I found. That one
yeah,
shows up a lot.
it's a good base coat for gold.
Yeah.
It's a
Absolutely.
nice it's a nice just like starting point.
Yep. Yep. Really kind of has that like it's that wonderful like almost ochre, almost kind of browny color that just
Yep.
sets your tone right where you kind of want it to be. Yeah. All right. Uh oh, and somebody said Athonian camo shade is made from rotten squished peas. I would
I
believe
believe,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
I believe it. It's disgusting. It tastes like what I imagine eating rotten chlorophyll tastes like.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, like if you had a plant that just was like torn up and laid out on the sidewalk for 3 days and rotted, then you put through that in your mouth. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. All right. Let's see. Okay. And then Well, that's a funny question, Master Stugel. I'll ask the question exactly as asked. Here we go. Do you believe contrast paints are the devil? That is the direct question.
Absolutely not. I believe that if it gets contrast paint is cool. If it gets people painting, good on them. Uh, anything that gets people painting more miniatures is cool to me.
Right on. This question here I think is really good because you taught a class on this at Nova, and this is something you do really, really well, going all the way back to that Nemo piece, which is so Danny Sanchez says, how do you approach OSL or setting an ambiance from the preparation point of view? So, like
So,
early on.
okay, so I try and imagine, uh, particularly if you don't have the advantage of having any of the elements around them. Like on a bust, I try and imagine the setting the character's in and what kind of lights will be in the environment. Uh, then I will take pictures, right? So everybody's got a flash, like grab a flashlight, grab a lamp. You can snap reference photos of different light angles on your model, and then take a picture with your phone. You can see how the light casts and where the shadows are, and it helps to create for really complex lighting schemes.
Nice. Now, are you going to be teaching your OSL class again somewhere that people can check out?
Currently, I'm not sure. I might be teaching some classes at Adepticon, but it's not 100% yet, so I don't want to guarantee that.
Okay, gotcha. Here's what I will say though. If he does end up teaching it at Adepticon or anywhere where you are and you have a chance to take it, you absolutely should. If it's not evident from all the minis you've seen thus far, Erik has a really amazing mastery of light and how it affects on the minis and how it plays and using it. You would do yourself a great, great service by showing up to his class. So, absolutely, absolutely. If you get a chance to take a class with this man, you should do it. Okay. All right. Here we'll start with this last question because I think it's a good one to we'll end. I'm sorry with this last question because I think it's a good one to end on, and that's this question. And this is I'm gonna ask it exactly as he typed it because I think it's interesting phrased this way. Because I would sort of like I would smart at this, but here we go. At what point did you feel that you became a master painter? What was the mini that made you feel you've arrived into sort of an upper echelon of painters?
Oh my god. I don't feel like I feel like I'm a pretty good painter.
Yeah.
I'll put it that way. I don't feel like I'm a master painter. We're always learning. Um, as far as the upper echelon, there's definitely guys better than me. Uh, I appreciate the guy asking that, but yeah, I don't know. That is a very tough question.
And this is I agree. And again, I asked it exactly as because I thought that would be your response because I feel the same way all the time, right? Like, I don't know that there's ever some mini, right, where you feel like, okay, that's it, I'm good. And I don't know that I'd want to ever feel that way, right? I spend
Yeah.
most of my days looking at everybody else's work and thinking, that's so cool. That inspires me. That's awesome, right? Just being impressed and amazed and excited about all the work I'm seeing. And I think that kind of drives you. It keeps that fire burning down there, right?
Yeah. The day I beat Kirill Kanev in a painting competition, I'll tell you I've arrived.
There you go. That's a 1-to-1 mono. There it is. That's the bar we've got to set. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, Erik, thank you so much, buddy. This has been an absolute blast hanging out, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, man.
Absolutely. To all of you out there who are watching, thank you very much for all the good questions. Thanks for watching. We really appreciate it. I will list Erik's Instagram down below so you can go follow him there, as well as all his other links so you can go check him out. Keep in touch with him and his work. He's definitely always doing stuff you will want to follow. So, for all of you out there, thank you very much. As always, we'll see you next time.